Hello YouTube, this is Robert Ness 816 and this is going to be another suspension setup video with my Traxxas RC cars. The first two I made were actually surprisingly popular, so since people seem to be getting some good information about them, I figured I'd make some more. And we will start off with suspension tuning as I did the last time. So all of these cars have basically the same suspension setup, similar spring, well actually the same spring rates and shock oils are used on them except for the Slash. But all of the other cars more or less are running the same spring rate and shock oil setup. All of the shorter wheelbase two-wheel drives have the same amount of weight in the front, so that would be the Bandit, the Rustler, and the Stampede, which is not exactly a Stampede, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So they all have, I believe it's 30 grams of tungsten weight in the front, just in front of the front bulkhead, which you can see right here. So there's, I believe it's 5 or 6 of these little tungsten weights put in the front bulkhead right here. I'm using Scotch brand outdoor double-sided sticky tape for them, and they have been there for about 3 years now, so they have not come loose at all. That's the same on the Rustler, which you can see here, and on the Stampede slash used to be a Bandit. And that is to add a little bit of weight on the front end, just to keep some weight on the front wheels on these older style Traxxas two-wheel drive platforms. The Bandit actually had the most work done to it. I'm going like that, suspension tuning wise. What I discovered with the Bandit is that it likes to understeer a lot. I discovered that early on, and I always assumed that was just how the Bandit was always going to be. I do see people putting a lot of work into them to make them into like a mid-motor setup, putting all the weight towards the front of the Bandit, doing all sorts of things to make the Bandit steer. And for me, it was a combination of two things. And those two things, or actually one of those two things, ended up helping out the other two-wheel drive platforms quite a bit. The Slash in the last video was a high CG chassis, and it is now a low CG chassis. And the previous suspension setup I had on that did not work so well on the low CG chassis because the weight was not being shifted around the same as it is now on the low CG chassis. So things change when the center of gravity is lowered. The handling characteristics and the weight transfer of the vehicle changes a lot when that happens. So getting into the Bandit now. So the Bandit, in order to make it steer better, you can see it's very dirty unfortunately, but that's just for me being lazy because I raced these on a dirt track with a bunch of friends, and yeah, I'm lazy. But anyway, so as far as making the Bandit not understeer, it handles a lot like the Rustler does now too, which is very neutral, and it really is great. So the only thing that I did to make the understeer almost completely go away is add the tungsten weights to the front. That is, I believe it's 30 grams in the front. I put that in like 3 years ago, so I don't even remember, but I'm pretty sure it's like 30 grams of tungsten weight in the front. And then I put on Traxxas Rustler Stampede slash, they're all the same front suspension arms, onto the front of the Bandit. So this really did not change the front width that much really. It's maybe a little teeny bit wider, but I think the suspension geometry might be a little bit different now. So basically, the Bandit had a really big issue with understeer, as I mentioned. You would have to kind of slam on the brakes to make the weight go to the front to make the Bandit steer the way you wanted it to. not in really desirable handling characteristics. So all you would really need to do for this conversion is just buy the Rustler front suspension arms and the Rustler caster blocks, and of course the hinge pins that are associated with that, because they are different as well. So in doing so, that made a really big improvement in the way how the Bandit corners. Secondly, I have these optional springs that Traxxas offers, because remember, Traxxas has 5 different spring rates available for the stock Ultra Shocks. And what I'm running here are the Traxxas green front springs and the standard Traxxas black rear springs. So the front springs are part number 6862 for the green front springs, and the black rear springs are 6858. And the weaker front springs helps the weight to transfer to the front of the vehicle when you're cornering. So if you have a stiff front spring on a low CG chassis, the weight is already pretty low, so your body roll is going to be very minimal. So when you're cornering, you put a softer spring in the front that allows the front suspension to work better. The weight transfers to the front end, whichever side is steering, and your buggy will now steer the way that you want it to steer. It will have a very neutral handling characteristic. And again, to really take advantage of that, you need to have these different front suspension arms in there. So very cheap modification, but a huge improvement in how the Bandit handles. I don't know why Traxxas has different suspension arms in the front for the Bandit when you could literally run, you know, the regular arms for the Slash, Rustler, Stampede, whatever, in the Bandit as well, and it literally will transform the way how this buggy handles. So again, it's just the Rustler front suspension arms and the Rustler caster blocks. All 3 of these RCs use literally the same front suspension arms and caster blocks. So except for the Bandit. The Bandit's got to be different for some reason. No idea why. Stupid. So anyway, I'm running 20 weight shock coil in the front, and in the rear I'm running, I believe, 30 weight shock coil in the back. And again, when you're running on a track, you want the suspension to work. You don't want to run super stiff shock oil on a track, because if the suspension can't do its thing, the weight's not going to be able to transfer where it needs to go, and your buggy's going to handle like shit. So I'm not launching these things off of a 40-foot cliff or anything like that. I'm just running these on a track, and these handle really fucking good when you're driving this on a track, when you have the suspension set up properly. I can compete with 4-wheel drive buggies, 4-wheel drive short course trucks. It handles really good. So the Slash is a little bit different. It's also going to be filthy. So you can see I run the body washers underneath, and that is to protect the body, because with the Slash body now, when you beat the crap out of it, the body mounts like to poke through the body, especially in the back. So what this does is it greatly prolongs the lifespan of the body. And as you can see, we don't really go very light or easy on each other when we race, because it is pretty much just doing it for fun. There is, of course, a competitive aspect to it, but it's not anything crazy. So again, same green front springs in the front, black springs in the back here. I'm running 25 weight oil in the front, and I believe it's 30 weight or 35 weight in the back. I can't remember. So yeah, that's pretty much how the Slash is. So I do have a little bit more weight in the front here, because the Slash is, I found that it likes to have a little bit more weight in the front here, especially when I'm running this on 3S. I do run this on 3S as well, and your throttle finger becomes very sensitive on 3S. This really, if you have it set up properly, you're not an idiot with the throttle, you will not be wheeling all over the place, but you will build up a shitload of top end speed going down the back straightaway with this thing. All of these actually get pretty crazy on 3S, but yeah, so just keep that in mind. proper setup, proper throttle application is a big win. So yeah, same suspension setup here. The rear toe-in here, or is that toe-in or caster? I think it's caster. Trying to remember. I think it's toe-in. No, camber. There we go. Sorry, brain freeze. The rear camber I have is, for the most part, is going to be straight up and down on these, on pretty much all of these. The front camber is going to be slightly in just a little bit, maybe like a degree or like a half a degree, just a little bit. This one, the Bandit, might be a half a degree of front toe in, just to get a little bit more bite out of the front tires. But yeah, so the battery compartment here, I have it in the back. I do sometimes shift it towards the front, but for the most part though, I have the battery sitting in the back. This one I have 50 grams maybe of weight in the front. I've got 4 or 5 of those blocks here in the front, and then I have like maybe 3 or more put underneath the chassis, underneath the top chassis there. So yeah, big improvement here with the low CG chassis, because this thing, even with the different suspension setup that I mentioned before, was not very competitive, especially now that I'm running 2S and 3S packs in it there, and brushless too. Obviously this thing was a mess with the high CG chassis, but with the low CG chassis it is great. So most of the guys I run with, they all have either low C short course trucks or Traxxas short course trucks, and against them they're, this thing right now is super competitive. So that's the Slash. The Rustler. So the Rustler out of all of them is probably my favorite, because this thing is fantastic. It basically has very neutral handling characteristics out of the box. The tires that it comes with on a track are actually fantastic. They really do grip well on a dirt track. They last a long time if you're using them for what they're intended for. On dirt, on pavement, obviously they'll wear out really quickly, but on dirt they last a long time. So 20 weight oil in the front, green springs in the front, black springs in the back, 30 weight rear oil. My camber setup here is basically up and down, really, so it's like zero camber. The front, maybe a half a degree of negative camber in the front, again to make that front end grip a little bit when it's driving there. So basically very basic setup, nothing too crazy on these trucks. And again, they're all very competitive. 3S, 2S, they work great. It all depends on how your throttle finger application is and your slipper cut settings, all that stuff. The Stampede. So the Stampede is, or was, a Bandit. This was my first Traxxas RC, getting back into the hobby after like a 20-year hiatus. So I had 2 Bandits. I had a VXL, which is what this one always was, and then this one started off life as a brushed Bandit, and that was in 2019. So skip ahead, and I recently decided to turn it into a Stampede of sorts. So there it is. I do have the blue Bigfoot front bumper coming in for it, which is just a little teeny bit bigger, just gives it more of a truck look. But yes, the same suspension setup here. I still have 20 weight oil in the front here, green springs, black springs in the back, 30 weight oil in the back. Pretty much handles like the Rustler, except with less grip, because these tires are not as grippy as the Rustler is. So the Stampede is really the biggest piece of crap that Traxxas has in their two-wheel drive lineup. And it's not to bash on it, it's just to be honest, because it sucks. The reason why it sucks is because the center of gravity on that truck is way too high. All the weight is in the back of the Stampede, so all it wants to do is wheelie and flip over. So even the brush version is a train wreck out of the box. And that's just how Traxxas has it set up. I don't know why they don't change the chassis on that truck just to make the center of gravity a little bit lower, because it really could benefit from that. There really is no reason at all to have the center of gravity super high on the Stampede. So basically this thing handles like the Rustler does. The Rustler handles really well. The Stampede handles really well. Basically um, it has the, what are these, the Bigfoot front body mounts, so I can lower the front of the body, and the rear is the standard Stampede body mounts. They're put down all the way. The adjustable body mounts actually won't go down far enough to where I want it to be, so I use the standard Stampede body mounts. So, and then also the holes for the body needed to be re-drilled because the Rustler and Bandit chassis is a little bit longer. So that's pretty much it for that. And of course there is a little bit of a gap in the body and the chassis right now. So if any of you guys have ever had a Kyosho tracker, basically this is pretty much the same concept. My washing machine is done, or dryer. That's Samsung for you. You need a whole musical symphony for the clothes to be done. Holy crap. It's still going. Eventually it'll stop. There we go. So anyway, if any of you guys have ever had the Kyosho tracker, the Kyosho Outrage, or the Kyosho Outrage ST, you'll know that they're all pretty much based on the exact same platform, just with different wheels, body, and body mounts. Pretty much the same concept with this, what I did with the Stampede here. Put it on a Rustler or Bandit chassis, different body mounts, different tires, and there you go. Pretty much a Traxxas Stampede two-wheel drive that now handles like it's supposed to, instead of being a hot mess. So that's pretty much it. And also on a side note, if you guys want to make your Traxxas two-wheel drive transmissions bulletproof, say you don't have the 272R transmission and you have the regular 272 Magnum, the only things that you need to buy for that would be the updated Traxxas top shaft, which eliminates the roll pin which breaks, the hardened steel Traxxas idler gear, which is much stronger than the cast idler gear that these come with, or you can do what I did and buy the Robinson Racing hardened steel idler gear as well, which is much stronger than a stock idler gear. Then the drive shafts, I'm running the Traxxas Extreme Duty drive shafts, which is found in the Slash Ultimate and the Rustler 4x4 VXL. They fit, but they're going to need to wear into the stock suspension arms. You can see I have rub marks in them, but these have been in here for about 3 years now, and they're not wearing, they're not breaking, they're just working. The grease I run in these diffs is going to be the regular Traxxas thrust bearing grease, because it's thick and tacky, and it has a little bit of resistance in there, and it stays put. So basically I get a little bit of diff action in there too, so the diff isn't completely freewheeling. In the Bandit, I'm actually running the brand new Traxxas Drag Slash rear drive shafts here, because they are now appropriately sized for the Bandit. Before this, you would have to cut down the other drive shafts to make them fit, but thankfully Traxxas offers these drive shafts now as standard on the Drag Slash, so basically you can just throw them into your Bandit now and have a bulletproof Bandit transmission. So the 272 and 272R transmissions have smaller slipper clutches. I do wish Traxxas would put in a larger slipper clutch into these transmissions, but it is what it is. So basically on 3S, you need to have the slipper clutch about a quarter of a turn loose from tight, and that will give you a little bit of a slip factor, so you'll be able to put the power down. Although again, remember your throttle finger will need to be the determining factor with that. With these tires, the grip is amazing. Same thing with the Bandit, so there's no issues really with grip. Wheeling is not so much an issue as long as you're good with your throttle finger. If you drive it like an idiot, it's going to basically respond to you like an idiot. It's going to wheelie, it's going to be a mess, it's going to be all over the place. The Slash with these tires, the regular Traxxas branded tires, not the Goodrich tires or the Kumo tires. These have really good grip. They have excellent straight line stability. They turn in pretty good. There is a little bit of understeer with these tires, but it's really nothing too crazy or anything like that. But yeah, as far as dealing with the stock Slash tires, these run great. The Rustler and Bandit with proper suspension setups, these tires grip really, really good though, so no complaints with them. The Stampede tires, so since the Stampede out of the box with the high CG chassis that it comes with is a mess, Traxxas put these tires on it because they know that they slip. So basically that is a cheap way for them to keep the Bandit stable without rolling over all the time, even though it still pretty much rolls over all the time. So with this particular setup, I do run a slipper a little bit looser than normal, and the truck seems to be fine. It corners okay. Basically, it doesn't have any issues. I built this one because of the people I race with have Armor Gorgons, and a regular Stampede has no chance against them. The Gorgon is actually fantastic out of the box. It handles really good. It's actually pretty damn fun out of the box. Um, so yeah, I built this thing just because I'm a cheapskate, and this is pretty much a cheap way of having an Arma Gorgon on a budget. So without buying anything new because I'm just too lazy. I have enough remote control cars. I don't need any more. Um, so that's pretty much it, guys. That's basically everything that I can tell you about the two-wheel drives and my experiences with them. So if you have any questions or anything else like that, leave a comment, tell me what you think, and thanks for watching.